This is Shane Gibson's podcast from closingbigger.net. Last week, I had a fantastic conversation with Mike Curlis, VP of Sales for Maximizer CRM. The topic of this live conversation we recorded here in Vancouver together was AI on the prize, which was, a play on words, of course, really AI being the goal or the prize for many sales organizations to implement effectively and also manage the use of AI by their sales teams so it's not only effective, but also safe and on brand for the organization. So we recorded this session. I'm going to just sort of drop you in the middle of it as I introduce myself and Mike and really dig into key topics for sales leaders to think about and address when they're looking to implement AI within their organization effectively. In addition to this, we actually dig into some of the things Maximizer CRM has done to reinvent themselves with relevant, effective AI tools and augmentation within their CRM for both sales leaders and salespeople.
So AI on the prize, that's today's focus. It's really about artificial intelligence, the impact it's having on the world of the VP of sales. But I think also this discussion is really today going to be focused on just overall how that role of the VP of sales has changed, what it looks like today and where we're going. And so I asked Mike Curlis if he'd sit down with me and have this conversation about really the future of sales leadership and what's happening. And Mike, of course, is the VP of Sales for Maximizer CRM. So thanks a lot for connecting and agreeing to sit down today.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and so maybe we'll do a quick introduction of ourselves. Sure. For those people who haven't sort of tuned in and listened to any of our content before, kind of what we're about, what we do. Again, I said my name's Shane Gibson. I'm a speaker, author, sales trainer. I've spoken to over 200,000 people on 5 continents in the last 20 plus years. I've written 4 books on sales, marketing, and digital transformation. And when I'm not doing sales-focused, tech-focused stuff, you'd probably find me out here running the seawall in the background here. That's sort of what I do. I live here in Vancouver, spend a lot of time outdoors. And Mike, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and a little bit about Maximizer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, funny enough, I began my sales career just behind us where we're sitting. I've been in sales and sales management for 25 years now, I guess. During that time, I've sold everything from sporting goods, very low-tech type of selling, to now I've been in SaaS software for about the last 10 or 15 years. I've been fortunate. I've been involved in a couple of exits that worked out very well. The most recent one to Microsoft a couple of years ago. And as you said, now I'm the VP of Sales here at Maximizer CRM.
Fantastic. So it's interesting because one of the things I think is unique about yourself and kind of myself as well is that we're both in sales, but we get to look behind the curtain within all these sales organizations.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting thing to see all these sales cultures, the application of process and technology or the lack thereof. And so I think it gives us some interesting perspective. Like we're not just looking at, hey, what we've done in our careers, but as you and I have had conversations casually, socially around sales, we've had a good sit down with a lot of great sales leaders, but also a lot of organizations that maybe needed some help to get in the right direction from a technology and process perspective. And so maybe we'll start off with, like, what do you see as the role of the VP of sales today? What does that role look like? What are we facing? What's expected of us? What's happening today for your average VP of sales, for yourself, but also all those teams you're meeting with on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess if I were to talk about myself and then maybe what we see at Maximizer. So you, as a head of sales today, you just have a proliferation of technology. There's so much out there. And I'm not even talking about necessarily how you apply AI. You could back it up a couple of years before AI exploded. That's another whole level that I think a VP of sales has to understand today. And how do you implement that in your sales process? But I think there's just so many tools out there that you can choose from. So how do you know which ones to put into your tech stack? There's so much data that's available as well. So how do you pick the right ones that you're going to concentrate on and leverage that? And then, of course, there's always the human element. So how do you coach, attract, retain, inspire your sales team to go to success? And I think at Maximizer, we're fortunate. We deal with a lot of sales teams and sales leaders, so we see it all, from young companies just trying to get off the ground and looking for a CRM to sort of help them get organized, to more enterprise level accounts that are really looking to take their sales sort of revenue operation machine to the next level.
And I think that's interesting. If we look at these organizations, and I'll have people ask me, hey, Shane, so, how many small companies do you come across that don't have a sales playbook in place?
Yeah.
And my answer is, let's not talk about small companies. Let's talk about like 80-year-old companies with 50 sales staff that don't have even a sales playbook in place, let alone a CRM. How common is that for you to come across an organization that really doesn't have a process mapped out, that they get these leaders who are not even leading to a process yet? Is this common?
I think it is too. I think it's very common. So I've worked for small companies, startups that would make sense not to have a playbook. And I've worked for large companies like Sony that we had to put a playbook in place. And when I'm dealing with those organizations, I would say it's more common than not that a playbook is in place.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I think a lot of companies struggle with, okay, we know we have to build a playbook, but then how does a CRM implementation support a playbook, and how the two intertwine together to have that process in place?
I guess the challenge there is sometimes those procuring the technology and those actually using it sometimes are in different towers. And I've seen that in all kinds of sales tech, where it's handed down by a different department or a different team, and they forgot to maybe check in with the sellers.
Oh, I agree. I have a good friend of mine who does a lot of CRM implementations, and he always talks about, did the sales team have any input into the implementation of the CRM up front, or are they sort of coming to the party late because IT were the ones that led the implementation of the CRM? So you just want to make sure that however you decide to do it, that the CRM and that process reflects how you sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's I've been brought in after the fact so many times where companies invested big dollars in, one of the really big CRM companies that cost upper six figures to implement as a minimum, and then it doesn't move the needle. So then someone kind of comes and reaches out to me and says, hey, our CRM hasn't moved the needle. I need to justify this purchase. Come help us.
That's right.
Then I come in and, I guess we have to build a sales process now, when that's really where it should have started. And so I think that, technology leading instead of leadership and strategy is, I think, one of the challenges. So one of the things I look at is, for me, with the VP of sales, like you talked about, like what's going on with them, is that there's actually just one of the things acting upon the VP of sales that's making us shift as sales leaders, and not just the VP of sales, but your frontline sales managers as well, is a shift in sales competency.
Yeah.
So what's required to be successful in selling today is so different in the past. So there's several tracks that I see are impacting them, and I'd be curious to see, what you've seen and if this resonates with you. But number one, I see today's vice president of sales or sales leader, head of sales, whatever we're going to call them, or even your CRO, they need to be one part CTO. They need to be one part coach. And then on the other side, they have to be this multidisciplinarian who also understands like operation and marketing and finance, and they're able to coordinate with all those teams. I think in the past, it was much more narrower, and it was very sales focused is what they had to do. And so, and why I say they need to be one part CTO is with the advent of tools like AI, but also the fact that our competitors are loaded up with these incredible sales tech stacks, that we have to stay ahead of the game. And as salespeople, that competency map that's needed today is that on top of fundamentally good sales skills, they actually have to have partnership skills. So we've talked about the trusted advisor forever, for many years, about how important it is to become a trusted advisor as a salesperson. And I think that was, a good sort of mantra. But today now, the customer is saying that. The buyer is saying, hey, if you're not adding value in the relationship, I'm just going to go to your website.
Yeah.
And then on the other side is, okay, now you need these higher level emotional intelligence skills as salespeople, but then you also need TQ, which is, of course, Justin Michael, I think, was the first one to coin that term. At least that's where I read it. But TQ is that technology intelligence.
Yeah.
And so things like, as a salesperson, understanding how to evaluate technology, understanding tech process, being able to speak the language of tech, and even prompt writing. Like, who would have thought that as you're hiring salespeople, my salespeople better need to be able to write prompts and talk to AI.
Yeah.
So these are all skills that they didn't need before. So you've got higher emotional intelligence skills, then you've got this competency map they need, and then on the other end, you need this remote selling competency as well. So I'm curious to ask you, and I know I've sort of gone on a bit of a rant there, but are you seeing this impacting the organizations you're working in, these three big trends of more technology, higher TQ, higher emotional intelligence? Are you seeing this kind of bleed into what you're doing?
Yeah, I am. So having been in tech for the last, say, 10 or so years, I've dealt with a lot of people in those sort of sales leadership roles, and as I said myself, and we know that the average tenure for a sales leader is less than 2 years. A study I saw recently about 2024 said about half of sales leaders are on track to hit their target for the year, and more than half are having a hard time forecasting. So I think that's the net result of a lot of things that you're talking about. So are they using the right technology in the right way? I think the other thing that you touched on, though, was the remote culture and remote workforces. So if you go back before, when a sales manager might have a geographical territory or something like that, well, those days are long gone. Now you have sales teams that are remote, they're across the globe. You have to have systems and processes in place that can coordinate all that information and figure out where to put your attention. And the other thing too is selling, which is so different. So the days of going and seeing people in person, certainly in tech, are mostly gone. I joke about how sometimes you might do a presentation and you're on Teams or Zoom and the cameras fire up and there might be 30 people on the other side. Everybody's got their camera off. Nobody's talking. It's a much different sales environment today. And then I think the last point just to touch on was the amount of research people have done before they actually want to engage a human.
100%.
Right? So they're on the websites, they're doing the reviews, they're checking with other sources, and now they're coming to the sales process pretty armed with what they want to talk about.
If you've got a junior account executive who's been in the role for 90 days, the customers they're talking to will usually know significantly more about the world in general in business, and definitely more about your competitors and all the opportunities. And so this is where that partnership model, where depending on the industry, the data I've seen, like the automotive industry is over 80% of the buying process is done by the time you know the customer exists. Other industries is about 60%. But they still want, even B2B buyers that want to buy remotely and actually self-serve, about a third of them still want that human assist near the end. But that human assist is not about taking the order. It's actually about asking the hard questions. It's about building value. It's about really aligning the solution for the client. And so that's not a script.
That's right.
So that requires, in the past we could just give people a script, train them to memorize it, get them on the phone. And now it's much more complex to teach people business acumen and emotional intelligence and listening skills and all these things, right? And then you combine that with the fact that they're powered by AI and tech, hopefully, or I should be powering it with it. I think that's a kind of a key piece. So in the last 10 years, and we kind of talked about this already, we've kind of taken the top off of it, but what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the last 10 years from the perspective of the sales leader, what their world looks like? We kind of talk about what it looks like today, but what's the big shifts?
Well, I think it's always going to start with technology and data and trying to amalgamate that into your selling process in order to support your goals. So I think the sales leader plays probably a pretty big role in that, but I'd also say there's an integration with the marketing team. So, as the marketing team and stack aligns with the sales team and the sales technology, you have to have a full holistic view of the funnel. So what's driving what, and we'll get into KPIs and all those kind of things. But I think that's one thing. And then I was actually going to ask you a question. So a lot of companies, when you're talking about having a junior person be the first point of contact with a company, so a lot of sales companies or software companies will have an SDR role. So an SDR is out there sending out all those emails. We know that AI is augmenting a lot of that activity now. And so let's say somebody actually wants to talk. So is the phone call to the SDR the best thing that you should have in your sales process? Or do you want to have that routed to a more senior person? So, you look at it how some companies will go SDR to an account executive to a customer success, and the customer ends up getting kind of passed around throughout that life cycle versus how do you know when to engage?
And this is an interesting debate that's even started with when the advent of the SDR came on the scene, right? Where we have someone who essentially booked appointments for account executives, but they do a whole lot more than that. It's evolved. So I would say that, organizations that significantly invest in the competency of their SDRs, do proper like product education and business acumen training, and actually like role play with them, and fire the hard questions at them, make sure they understand the ideal client profile, and actually really, really immerse that SDR in the world of the client almost as much as you would an account executive. I think if you can do that, they don't have to, and they only need to know enough just to answer the key questions and create a compelling reason and sell why you need to talk to the AE.
Yes.
They're really selling the AE and their expertise. Yeah. So they don't need to be as in depth, but they can't be caught like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
Where the hard question comes and they have their answer for everything is, well, you have to talk to somebody else.
Yes.
Because if you're calling me and everything is you have to talk to somebody else, I'm like, well, then have someone else call me.
Yeah.
So I think that, that's, one of the challenges is ill-equipped SDRs. But I think you're right. What's happening though is with AI and automation, both account executives, even key account managers, enterprise salespeople, and SDRs, is what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, their role is shrinking. Yeah. As technology automates more, and for instance, like research is now done really well through tech, where you're looking at multiple intent signals and sources, and you're bubbling up information about that person's behavior, and it's handing it to you. So you no longer have to do 20 minutes of research before a call. You can do 1 minute. And so, okay, so that role is, so I don't have to do that anymore. And so no, I also don't have to send my 3 follow-up emails anymore. So now what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, what's my role? Like, so it's becoming more and more human, actually. So I think there's no excuse that an SDR doesn't have stronger business acumen, better communication skills, because that's all they need to really do. The rest of it's now being enabled by tech and workflow. And so I think that mastering human psychology is what I would be hiring SDRs for, not for following a script. And I think that's at least the best practices that I start to see evolve. And then your other question, which is a tough one, is like, how do I hand over that client without losing relationship momentum? So one of the first one is edification. So I'm going to build up the next person. So Mike, I love working with Mike. You know what? He's worked with a ton of financial services organizations that are in your space, probably a lot of familiar names. He really understands your business. By the way, he's been in the software space now for over a decade as well before us. I think he's got a lot to offer. I think you're going to really enjoy meeting him. And I'm actually pumping you up, right? Yeah. Versus, oh, well, your account executive is Mike. I'll send you an email,
yeah, exactly.
Right? And so if you don't sell the next person and edify them, then they don't know why they're talking to them. But on the other side is, whoever's got the deepest relationship, I think, is still responsible for a relationship, even when you hand that account over.
Yeah.
I still think it's to your advantage as an account executive to actually maintain that relationship for referrals, for future expansion. Or what if that person leaves?
Yeah.
And they go to another company?
Yeah.
If you get a relationship, that's another deal. And so I think, too often it's you pass the client along like they're a hot potato, and you get along to your next very short focused commission.
Yeah.
But this is something that we probably are going to talk about in our next podcast. I know we're going to do another interview around sales leadership versus sales management together. Is salespeople do what you pay them to do. So if you're not paying for the behaviors you want in your compensation plan, they're not going to do those things. So I know it's a really long answer to your question, but that's my thoughts on kind of SDR, AE, client life cycle. There's a lot to unpack there, though.
There is, and I think what I took out of that, though, was the role of AI versus the role of humans still. And how do we use AI appropriately without trying to necessarily replace human activity, but to augment that human reality or interactions? Because I think we all know when we get an email that's AI driven.
100%.
Right? And if you kind of take it down a level, we know that people, they want to buy from people they like, usually, and I know that sounds simplistic, but it's true, and people that they trust.
Yeah. And
so when you have those human interactions, you have to be building that rapport and that trust in order to have people do business with you.
Yeah. And I say on the AI-based outreach, because I don't really believe in it.
No.
Like, I don't believe in mass emailing.
Yeah.
But I'd never really hadn't touched it in years. So more recently, I've been experimenting with it. Yeah. Not because I think, well, I'm kind of beating it up, but I actually haven't firsthand tried it out. So I've been working with a couple AI-based outbound tools. for reaching out to my ideal client profile, which are sales leaders like yourself who can smell a pitch a mile away. So which is like the worst audience.
Yeah.
And I'm finding some moderate results.
Yeah.
But still I find that over optimization with AI versus just thinking about like what you want to write, it just misses. It comes across as someone who's not knowledgeable in the space. So, maybe in 24 months from now, I'll come back to you and say, man, AI is what you need to use for outreach because it's so smart, it's better than me.
Yeah.
But right now, I still think it's clunky.
Yeah.
And I think that, last thing you want to do is fire your SDRs and replace it with an outbound bot.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've all been on those websites where they're AI-driven bot trying to talk to you.
Yeah.
And you know how frustrating it is. And at the end of the day, you're trying to do business with an organization. And at some point, probably a human should intercede and start building that relationship.
Well, and it's most of what you see today is like 2 generations old from an AI perspective as well. Mm-hmm. So some of the more forward-reaching tools I've seen around even like audio-based coaches that you can call into and talk about a solution, they're getting pretty powerful if you train them well. Mm-hmm. But with that said, there's still that human element. They're still just repeating a knowledge base. They're not laterally thinking at this point. And at least, maybe I'll have to be replaced as a sales trainer or consultant in 36 months when that happens. And so I think, one of the evolutions I'm seeing, so you've talked about some of the big evolutions from like a shift in KPIs, right? Mm-hmm. This was one of the big ones. The other one we talked about was actually virtual selling, which leading that virtual team. Mm-hmm. And so I think we go back to TQ, that emotional intelligence period, the technology intelligence is, if you're leading a sales team and you log on to Zoom and you're 3 minutes late or 5 minutes late because you just can't figure out how to make it work.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're telling your team to use the CRM and then you're still using Excel. Mm-hmm. And you're analyzing data manually and taking hours when you've got AI-based tools. So in essence, you're a 3 out of 10 on the technology intelligence, and your sales team is 6. Mm-hmm. My opinion is your days are limited as a sales leader.
Yes. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree completely. Not only are your days limited, if your competitors are out there doing all that in a better way, mm-hmm. or faster or more intelligently or have more data to drive the KPIs, then your days really are limited. And so I know people that say things like, I'm not very good in the CRM, or, I'm not sure about AI. And if you're going to be in the sales game, you have to be good at those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed. And it's always, do I have to? Like when you see the next widget come out, you're like, oh no, I have to figure this thing out. Like that keeps me up at night, even with my clients. Because hey Shane, have you heard of this new technology that does the following? And I'll be like, give me a minute.
Yeah.
And then I'm up all night figuring it out.
Yeah.
But you have to stay, you don't have to stay like 2 years ahead of everybody, but I think that you need to be leading your team proactively from a technology perspective. And I think that's another piece, is that the other big difference I've seen, as you know, like back in the day, 2009, 2010, I wrote 2 books on social media marketing, mm-hmm. one with Steve Jagger, one with Jay Levinson. And that was like the dawn of civilization for social media marketing. And back then, yes, your staff were using social media, but a lot of people hadn't bought in. Like it was a slow buy-in, if you think about it, from a technology perspective. And, really big social media initiatives were kind of driven by the right people in many organizations, right? From the marketing department, from mm-hmm. designated social media marketers. But what I find interesting about AI is it is truly that product-led growth, where it's not like, should we use AI? It's like your sales team is already using AI. They're not telling you, they're using it to write documents and find proposals and research their customers and all these kinds of things, or write LinkedIn posts, but they're using it. Mm-hmm. So it's not a question of should we use it, but are you using it strategically?
Yeah, exactly. I think we all know salespeople that if you don't sort of arm them with the right messaging and parameters, they'll just kind of go and do their own messaging. Yeah. And that, you probably don't want that to happen. And that just gets amplified with social media. Mm-hmm. So, like a great way I've seen it used recently at Maximizer, we had an issue where we wanted to get some knowledge out there, some information. And so we kind of had some points floating around, and a person on the sales team we have an AI application that we use, spun out the document in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, we have to take it and still add the human touch to it and all the sort of branding and collateral. But the idea of turning a document around in a week is, you just can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
You can turn it around in half an hour.
And there's massive savings there. Like for my own business, because I'm, although I sell and work with large enterprises, my business truly is a small business, limited resources. And, for me, using tools like Fathom, which is, is my AI-based note taker, and then you combine that with a ChatGPT 4.0, where I'm able to then take that information from Fathom, let it know who the client is and what my value proposition is, and it spits out an executive summary that's customized based upon my client conversation in about 5 minutes instead of 3 hours. Like for me, I can add, 6 to 9 hours of other strategic activities where I was down in the weeds writing proposals. And if you multiply that across, let's say 10 salespeople in your organization on a weekly basis, that's like hiring 2 new salespeople.
That's right.
From a capacity perspective. So it's there's some real wins, I think, from a VP sales perspective on resource allocation. They start to see that the repetitive, mundane data, cut and paste type stuff, or even just the less repetitive, but like research that takes time. If I can compress that and save my sales team time, it's like hiring new salespeople. Like I've increased my head count.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Excuse me. Now I think we're talking about where do you want to use AI in your sales process and at what level. So the examples that we're just talking about are great usages of AI for a sales team to cut down on that administrative, the repetitive stuff, always with the human element over top of it, I would say, like getting all that admin stuff off of your plate. And then you can kind of elevate that up to say, okay, what are other uses for AI throughout the sales process and maybe at different levels?
So kind of the next topic that I'd like to address or kind of dive into is how AI is helping VPs of sales do their job better, be more efficient, more effective, or how it should be. Because I think the stats show that not everybody's using it, but those that do have some significant advantage. And so some of the stats, and I've got like 3 big ones here that I can think of, is number 1, lower team performance. So what we're finding is that, and this is according to Forrester Research in a study that was just done like a little under a year ago, is that a sales leader who's employing AI effectively, both for themselves and their sales organization, is 2 times more likely to hit quota than those that aren't utilizing it. That's a pretty big number, like 2 times more likely. So we know that some other stats you shared that just over half are going to hit quota. Which means that, likely that if you're not using it, your chance is probably about 25% versus 50 in essence, right? If I'm doing my math properly. And then the other one is customer retention. So sales leaders who are not using AI have a 33% lower retention rate. And that's from the Aberdeen group from a statistics perspective. So we've got this capacity to hit quota, and I'm sure it's very related to customer retention as well, right? That, 33% higher loss of clients. And then we have the fact that efficiency, that non-AI users are spending 20 to 40% more admin time than their competitors. And 20 to 40% more admin time is a lot for a sales leader. So when we look at this, I guess, one of my thoughts from this perspective is when we think about hitting quota, what are we doing? How does AI help your sales leader hit quota? Actually, the other stat is, which is interesting, that comes from a number of sources. Depending on the study, we found that CRM that's powered by AI that helps people to make decisions better on who they call, on who they're dealing with, and what opportunities to go after first, is helping sales teams increase win rates by 20 to 25%. Right? So we stack all this together. It's nice to share these stats, but like, what does that really do for me in the real world as a sales leader? Like, where are you seeing AI help create these efficiencies and better win rates and better decisions?
Yeah, maybe I'll answer that question in my current role as VP of Sales at Maximizer, and sort of what's Maximizer's take on AI. And I think you're right to draw the distinction between AI for sales leaders and AI for sales teams. So at Maximizer, I guess sort of the first thing to say is our take on AI is it has to be a blend of the humanities and technology. We're not just going to let AI go wild through your CRM or database or anything like that. We want to make sure that it's a trusted tool that you leverage. And so we use it really in three ways. The first is to do sort of exception reporting. So if you're looking at your pipeline, to help the sales leader see what's important, what's moving and what's not moving, and maybe why things aren't moving, and surfacing that information to you in a way that you can then action upon and coach your team maybe before it's too late.
So versus pouring through a spreadsheet, trying to figure out what's where.
Well, I mean, I guess depending on the size of your sales team, you might be looking at a wall of data.
Yeah.
Right? So what's important, what's concerning, where do you have to intercede before it's too late? So helping sort of lead and coach your team in that area. The other thing too is, again, big teams may have, I don't know, hundreds of activities that are being tracked every day in a CRM. And this can be things like, emails and cold calls and demos and meetings booked and social posts and all that kind of stuff. So using AI to kind of point out what activities are working, what activities are not working, and then being able to kind of connect the activities to the outcomes, which is, I'm a real big believer in that. And then the third way that we use it is to help the sales team prepare for a call with a prospect. So giving them, like you were talking about, the research at their fingertips. So I am at the discovery stage with a company that is in manufacturing. Help me build some questions so I get the insightful answers that I'm going to need in order to provide a recommended solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess, sorry, just to wrap that up though, that's sort of on the leadership side. And the sales rep themselves are, I think, the things that we've already talked about. Getting all that admin off of your plate. So having AI take a lot of that redundant, repetitive, heavy task-oriented stuff off of your plate. But then I would say there's also areas where you can use it to prompt the rep to make 100%. Sure they're doing the right activity at the right time.
And I think that's as a sales, I think you can only manage people so long, like from an energy perspective. You just can't micromanage a team of 10 people or 12 people. And if you've got 4 sales managers answering to you and they've each got 8 people answering to them, and to actually micromanage everybody to get everything to move forward is tough. And no one wants their boss tapping them on the shoulder, asking about every deal. They actually don't mind a CRM bubbling up an opportunity to their face. Much more than, hey, have you called that guy? But if the CRM's like, hey, it's about time to call this person because it's been exactly like 7.4 days and that's our optimal time to call them. That often it depersonalizes it too, right? The salespeople are more open to taking feedback from probably an AI coach than their sales manager. They're like, oh, when's the last time you closed a deal,
Well, I agree. And I think depending on, which CRM you're using and how you have it set up, you would see a lot of that in a dashboard anyway.
Yes.
So, my personal philosophy, I'm a very transparent manager. So we have dashboards that show all the deals that are happening type thing. And if there hasn't been activity on a certain opportunity for a while, things will turn red. So everybody can see it, right? And then of course you get the prompts and all that kind of stuff. But I guess there's 2 things I'd say to that, Shane, is I don't want to be a micromanager, and I don't think people like working for micromanagers. So if you have
statistically, it's proven to create underperformance.
There you go.
And micromanagement has the opposite effect, unless your goal is to get them to leave.
Exactly.
Which is usually what it ends up in from a sales perspective. Especially with even a middle pack reasonable performer can find an opportunity somewhere else where they're not being micromanaged. Right.
That's right. And then I would say that even goes back to what we were talking about earlier with KPIs. So if you're tracking the right KPIs, and for the most part, you can set those metrics up in a CRM, and then people can be held accountable to the key performance indicators, not every activity that they could be doing type thing. So I think if you have that set up and then you overlay AI with the things that I talked about for the sales leader, so the exception reporting and the monitoring and the surfacing, that type of thing, and then you have a transparent environment, people should want to perform. And if they don't want to perform, then I guess that's the point. That's where the managing and the coaching comes in. But the ability to kind of put all that together in one package is what we try to do at Maximizer.
Fantastic. And that was kind of my next question was, actually many years ago, Ryan Holmes, who was founder of Hootsuite, and I'm talking like this is when Hootsuite was still run out of like a corner of his agency. Like it wasn't even fully grown up and on its own. And I, told him, I'd already had written a book on social media marketing. I was writing another one, and I'm like, where do I get my information? And he goes, well, he goes, and he goes, well, you're a marketer. I said, yeah. He goes, well, don't hang out with marketers. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, because you're all getting together and you're talking about what's happening.
Yeah.
He goes, go hang out with programmers and developers. He says, because they're building the next apps that will be out in 12 to 24 months, right? That's the future of social. And so I did take his advice. I started to hang out at like meetups for people building applications for social technology. And I started to have visibility into what's going to happen. I guess why I share this is what I like about sitting here talking to you is, in a way, like Maximizer is thinking about what's next, right? So I'm curious, like when you look at your AI roadmap as a CRM, like what's coming out soon? Because I know you got some stuff coming out, but also what do you see as important components that you're going to be adding to your CRM platform, let's say over the next 24 months, if I'm not asking you to tip your competitive hand.
Fair enough.
But is there something you could share with me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, in my role, I love CRM. So maybe I could just tell you a little story for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you talked about Maximizer being around for a while. I actually bought Maximizer for my sales team back in 2004 at Sony, and we were literally loading that onto our Vios. So my relationship with Maximizer goes back a long time. And I've always enjoyed it. And when I had the opportunity to join the organization, that's why I jumped at it. But Maximizer has changed dramatically, to your point, over the last few years. And what I've been talking about a lot today is how does a sales leader use a CRM, and how does Maximizer help them in that role? So when we talk about our sales leader edition, we are talking about these leading indicators, leveraging AI, coaching a team. And the whole idea is that you can use Maximizer to sort of manage, monitor, and lead your team to success. So where we're focused on in the next immediate sort of timeline are additional applications of AI and reporting that can make it even easier on a sales leader to do those type of things. So the way that I was talking about is using AI to go through the data and finding out exception reporting, but then escalating that in a way that's visible or through dashboards and analytics. So we're, things again like AI enhanced leaderboards, AI actioned activities, being proactive in your activities rather than reactive. And so that's where Maximizer is really focusing on assisting and supporting the sales leader in order to address all the things that you talked about. So if you're not using AI like you talked about, you're 50% to target. And
you're staying up all night, crunching the numbers so that you know what you're coaching your people on.
Absolutely. Where do I coach? Where do I manage? Where do I dig in? But I guess you could say the opposite of that though too, which is where are we having success?
Yeah.
Why is, sales rep Ryan doing such a great job? What's happening there versus somebody else who might be new to the team?
And the great thing about AI is it's, to a large degree, it's pattern recognition instead of the bias of the leader. Like me as a leader, maybe I grew up in the 90s selling and now it's all about cold calling.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking through that lens. I'm looking for evidence of cold calling. When Paul over here did 2 calls yesterday, I want him to do 50.
Yeah.
But he booked 7 appointments through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And sometimes like the data will show me that. But as a biased leader, sometimes, and I'm being kind of extreme in my example, but or we have a certain relationship with other people that we're focusing on to coach, but maybe the biggest opportunity is to coach this person.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think that it does remove that bias for us. So when we think about your ethos, and you've kind of already brought it up a little bit, but I want to kind of refine it because people will say to me that, AI will never replace salespeople, or that it shouldn't replace salespeople, and that you still need that human element. But I do believe, and you've kind of brought it up, that I think that what our competitor is now is a salesperson powered by AI.
Yes.
So you're not going to be replaced by AI, but you're going to be beat by someone who's properly and strategically equipped with AI. You made a statement. I don't think you made it on this call, but in our previous conversation, is that AI. And I have some questions about it, and I thought I'd bring it up, is maybe we'll debate or discuss this one, is that AI can't build relationships for you.
Yeah.
What's your, share that with me, share your kind of perspective on that one.
Well, I think that's true. I like what you said about an AI assisted sales rep beating a non-AI assisted, but I would even bring it up a level to say AI assisted VP of sales versus non-AI assisted sales. So having AI do those functions that I was talking about, surfacing those exceptions, digging into data, that kind of stuff. So I totally agree with you there. And then, I don't think the human element, hopefully, will never go away. I joke sometimes when I'm talking to customers and prospects, like, we don't want to get to the point where an AI sales algorithm is selling to an AI buyer. and then who knows where it goes from there. So, I think if I look at the way Maximizer is leveraging AI to assist and empower, to make better informed decisions, to be a trusted tool to help you perform your job so that we do hit those metrics, so that we're 100% to target or we're very close on our forecasting. So leveraging AI to do those kind of things, while at the same time empowering the sales team to be able to do the activities that build those trusted relationships.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
And that for me is, helps me sleep at night a little bit.
Yeah.
Because like I'm in the business of teaching people how to get better at landing key and large accounts and build solid relationships with multiple people in those organizations. And I do believe that those emotional intelligence skills are vital. And to a large degree, people, especially in large, high-risk transactions, where like if I'm writing a check to you, it impacts my whole organization and my career.
Yeah.
I want a human assist. I don't want to buy that on autopilot. And I think that there's so much value that can be added by the human. But I think the day of being busy, for the sake of being busy, like how many salespeople I see getting ready to get ready in their CRM, like just hours in there poking around. Yeah. What are you doing? I'm building a prospecting list.
Yeah.
When you should show up on Monday morning, your prospect list is built for you. Your business intelligence on them is there. You know what the last white papers they were that downloaded. You know what's happening in their company, what their hiring head count has been over the last 2 weeks, and you're ready to call.
Yeah.
And you're not down in the weeds. And so I think that forces me to actually do more of what salespeople should be doing. And I think it forces sales leaders, hopefully gives you more time to coach your people, which is leadership is about building people. Coaching is where I get excited about AI, but again, that's my world, building people, training, developing people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was a few years back, I worked with a company called Build Direct, and they had 50 salespeople. And if you wanted to help them improve, you'd have to sit next to each of the sales reps and listen to them make their calls. So in order to do like a 1 hour coaching with you, I might have to sit next to you for 30 minutes or an hour to listen to what's going on, or listening to recordings. And that's the way it used to be, right? And we were all used to that. So the labor behind coaching a large team, even if you have 8 or 10 people and you want to coach them once a month, that's still probably like 8 to 10 hours like listening to calls and shadowing and everything else to figure it out. And then I look at the savings around a tool, and different tools do it differently, but a Chorus or a Gong or even a Fathom to some degree, but Gong especially, you can look across a team of like 20, 30 people, and using the AI, I have access to all their transcripts, their conversations, and start to pick up patterns. Like how often is a specific question coming up? How often is a specific feature set coming up? When are my people talking about price? All of this data, or even I can look at your last 10 calls and get data pushed to me, high level summary, how your calls went, what questions you asked, what questions you didn't ask, what your your listen to talk ratio is, and it's all in a nice report. And I don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
So now, instead of me spending hours prepping, I have better realistic data, not just my perspective, and I can actually coach more people in a shorter period of time. So we look at those wins. If you stack that up through the whole process as a sales leader, you're probably not getting hours back per month. You might be getting weeks back.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's the accelerant. Is if one thing we can't make more is time.
Yeah.
And so if we can spend more time on the things that move the needle, which is like coaching and developing our people, thinking more strategically, then I think that's where we win with AI as a leader. At least that's where I'm seeing it. And I'm excited to hear about your product, where it's at, but also your roadmap. Let's talk a little bit about the Maximizer product, because I kind of, and I say this totally respectfully, like actually when I first went to work with my father, and I'm talking like this is actually prior to 2000.
Yeah.
I don't want to date myself too much. It was Maximizer CRM that was loaded up on those disks that were, whatever those were.
3.5 floppies.
3.5 floppies.
Yeah.
You'd put like 30 of them in there to get the machine going.
Yeah.
And that was Maximizer. And so like my mind was kind of stuck there for many times until I eventually saw your SaaS version of your solution. And what I realized is it's kind of like the last time I drove a Ford is 1997. And now today, an F-150 is a little different today. Maybe you could speak to that. Like what's really changed within Maximizer? Who changed it? Like What is it, where's the push to invest and shift the platform?
Yeah. Great question, and I appreciate it because I love talking about it. And by the way, I drive an F-150, so I know what you're talking about. The night and day compared to what trucks used to be like. So yeah, Maximizer's been around a long time, which provides us great insight into how do organizations use a CRM. We've dealt with thousands of customers in every industry in probably every country around the globe. So we've got this very rich legacy of customers that we've worked with and that we've become trusted partners with. If I look at Maximizer today, we made a big push about 5 years ago, I would say, to really kind of reinvent the product and the organization. And so over the last few years, we've poured tremendous amounts of resources into the product itself. So that's on the technology, data security, all those type of things. Obviously, AI is where we're pushing today. We've hired a lot of people on the sort of resource side as well. So the company is really a very modern CRM platform today. Yeah. What I've been talking about today, I think I mentioned it, was our Sales Leader Edition, SLE. So that's the platform designed to manage and monitor and then coach your teams to success. It's really designed and targeted to people like me. Yeah. So back to sort of coaching, the question that you asked me, I'll get there in a second, but I think one of the best things you can do as a sales leader is be a really good coach and develop your people. And to me, having a long career in sales, that's always one of the most rewarding things, is when you see people grow and achieve success, wherever they may end up. So I love that. So leveraging these tools, and we're doing the things that you talked about in order to hear conversations and how often did you say this, or what was your answer to that pricing objection. Maybe salespeople like to talk. We know that. So there's all coaching that's going on as well, saying that maybe you're talking too much, maybe you should take a breath, let the prospect have a word in there, those type of tools. And where I'm going with this is if I can see all that in an amalgamated view with just sort of the key summaries of everything, that frees up my time as a sales leader so that I can get on the calls with you, or I'm more prepared for a one-on-one. And I guess my last point on that is it's exactly what we've been consistent about all day here, Shane, is that there's a place for AI and there's a place for the human touch. And while I love leveraging AI to help me in my job, there's still nothing like getting on a call with one of your sales reps and meeting the prospect, maybe bringing some experience to the table and seeing people live. I don't think you want to outsource and automate the whole thing.
If you have 20 to 40% less admin time, you got time to do that stuff.
That's right.
I find most sales leaders tell me, I know what to do, I just don't have time to do it. Like, I know the right thing. I know I should be coaching my people. I know I should be more strategic, but I am putting out fires, filling out paperwork, dealing with other departments. So I think there's a win there. But I think back to the Maximizer piece, would I be so bold as to say that if I could look at all the code within the back end of Maximizer today, that there's probably not a single line that's there that was in your software even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a completely new platform.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even just the look and feel of the software. One of my favorite parts of the Sales Leader Edition in the CRM is we call it Opportunity Viewer. It's a Kanban board for people that are in technology. It came from that, so I can see all my deals in one view. I know all the weighting, who's got what deal, how long it's been aging, and then like I was talking about, then we have a little bit of AI running in the background that says, you might want to look here because something's wrong with this deal and you need some coaching. So that type of both visual appeal of the product and then the insights that it brings is what we add to the CRM today. What do you see when it comes to practical ways to leverage AI?
I think practical ways to leverage AI come down to, back to what we talked about before, especially as a sales organization, is I think a lot of it, could be just product led. We can let our team do it. They're going to go out and find stuff they want to use. They're going to experiment. There might be no best practices built in. There's no measurement if it's working or not. There's no guardrails for accuracy or even making sure the processes follow well. So I think it's a lot like a CRM, that if I was to look at investing in AI for a sales team, the first thing I'd look at is, number one, map my process and my methodologies. So what are our steps in our sales process? And what are our best practices and core activities in each step? Right? And that's from initial research, the steps I do to research, what are the best practices, to what are my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps of researching, and then how do I move into now my outbound effort to connect with them, and what does that look like? What are the key steps? So I'm gonna map that out first. And then I look in that whole process and I go, what in here should be automated that my people are doing? Cutting and pasting, spending tons of hours. And what could be augmented? Like, where could I pull data or enhance the sales process using AI? So this is what I'm looking at. In my process, I'm kind of thinking, how can I replace myself as a salesperson with AI? Not really replace, but a lot of the left brain stuff, the non-creative leadership communication stuff. So I find those opportunities, and then I start small and test. So I don't think like I build an entire AI sales tech stack and revolutionize the way I do things and just blow up my sales team. I'm going to take one piece, like maybe it's a little bit around outbound research. And the next step is like, maybe it's getting AI coaching on email follow-up based upon personality profiles with a tool like Crystal Knows, which is like a disc-based AI tool that will tell you the style of the person you're selling to. So I might add that in. And then the next one I might test is something that helps me write proposals faster and more efficiently, and maybe a call recording tool that actually captions it and coaches me using AI. But the whole point is I'm going to start small with maybe a few clients or a few interactions or a small part of my process, make sure it kind of fits and works. And a friend of mine said the challenge with AI sometimes is we just plug it in and we do more of the wrong thing. So hey, just test it, make sure it works. And then measure your savings and your gains. Okay, so we've talked about, how many hours have I saved? Has my closing ratio improved? Has my open rate for my emails improved? So I start to look at all of these gains. And then from there, then I start to expand the more steps in my process. Start to stack on more AI tools once we've figured out how to use that. And then once that's in place, then I turn up the volume. Then I go, okay, now let's not reach out to 50 people a day. Let's reach out to 500. Let's find ways to maybe, now that this tech stack works, plug more of the sales team into it. And I think if we can take that more strategic, step-by-step process, and we lead that experimentation, and we bring the team in, find out the sales team what they've found, and maybe make it a group effort, but have a process to implement it. I think that makes a big difference. And sounds a lot like CRM implementation.
Yeah. I mean, that's listening to you kind of list off those points. That's exactly it. Like, so where does this live and breathe? And I would say it's within a great CRM implementation. So the very first thing you said was talking about mapping out your process. So making sure you have a solid process and it's working, and then building that into the CRM. And then the other thing that you said too is test and learn. So, you could spend 5 years building a great relationship with somebody and then let AI unleash it on your customer base, and all of a sudden one email has ruined what might have been years of building up that relationship.
100%.
And so when we work at, Maximizer, when we work with organizations, I say exactly like that. Let's start small and build from there. So you have a CRM, you begin building your tech stack. Where do we want to integrate? Where do we want to leverage other platforms? What information do we want to bring in? So bring it in, get it working properly, test it, and then double down on that kind of stuff. And I think that whole process, it's just accelerated by the use of AI and being very, very purposeful of how you're going to use AI in your sales process.
Fantastic. So I would say that, normally I summarize an episode, but you just summarized it for us. You really did hit the highlights of how to intelligently and strategically use AI. And it is about it enhancing your existing process. It may change your process a bit as well, because you realize that
it probably should, right?
So it will alter your process overall. But I think to start with the strategic steps first, one piece at a time, and still realize that the whole goal is to actually help us be better at being human, right? Instead of because I don't think being human is about doing admin or repetitive rote tasks. I think that is something that, AI is a tool, and we should be leveraging that tool. So just to wrap up, but also maybe it's something I should have mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, interview, whatever we want to call this discussion, is that the intent for Maximizer and Sales Academy to come together is one of our goals is to start to build a sales leader community that's really highly value added. And a lot of it is online for anybody globally, but of course, because we're also both Vancouver based in our backyard here, we're going to start to do some in-person events for sales leaders. So our first one is coming up on October 8th here in Vancouver. So if you're a sales leader and you're watching this, put this in your calendar, reach out to us, of course. I'm Shane at salesacademy.ca. You can hit salesacademy.ca to find me. Maximizer.com is where they can find yourself.
Yep.
And the event will be posted on both sites, but reach out to us, let us know you want to attend. The event will be much focused on a little bit on thought leadership. We'll probably have a special guest or at least some conversation, a fireside chat around sales leadership. But most of it is just for sales leaders to meet other sales leaders in the community and share how they're leveraging sales technologies, how they're leveraging AI, and how they're building their people. And that's our goal. So thanks a lot for connecting today. And I'm looking forward to our next episode where we talk about sales management versus sales leadership.
Yeah.
All right.
No, great to be here. Thanks, Shane. It's been a great conversation. I always enjoy talking about that kind of stuff and look forward to our next talks as well.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.